Log on, tune in, find out. Another good idea from Cambridge.
A setup of the categorical Langlands Correspondence.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So I'm in a position very similar to the one Jochen was, but there are some differences. So the talk was coerced by Oscar, and I actually didn't do what he wanted me to do. So he wanted me to talk, to give a survey talk on the general spectral construction, but I feel this is a bit too boring. So I'm going to give a survey talk on the correct setup for the categorical Langlands correspondence. And similarly to Jochen's situation, it's not something I have done, it's work that's done by other people, but actually it's not well known. And in fact, it's more or less written up, but the write-ups are not made public yet. So, I want to tell you about it. Hopefully it's interesting. Okay, so this is really a survey on the categorical Langlands correspondence. And the aim is to actually formulate the Langlands conjecture correctly, the geometric Langlands conjecture correctly. So the goal is to find a reasonable, so reasonable means formulation, so find a correct or reasonable formulation of the geometric Langlands conjecture. And reasonable means something that you cannot disprove in 1 minute. Okay. And this is really, it's a goal that's achieved now, so this is really a work of Rinkin, Drinfeld, and Geitzgori in various pieces. Okay, so let me start. I mean, if you've heard me talk about this stuff before, you've probably seen what I'm going to write down now. So let me start with the naive formulation of the conjecture. Which is morally correct, but literally not correct. So the naive formulation of the conjecture says that so C is a smooth compact curve over the complex numbers, and we have a pair of Langlands dual reductive groups. Again, over the complex numbers. Then there should be there should exist a canonical, meaning functorial in a strong sense, equivalence of categories. So I'm going to call it C sub G. And it's got to identify the derived category of quasi-coherent sheaves on stack of local systems with the derived category of D modules on a certain stack of bundles for the Langlands dual group. So there should be a canonical equivalence of categories which intertwines. So this is really what makes it canonical. Intertwines the natural symmetries on both sides. And I don't want to go too much into this, but since I'm talking about the setup, I should say it. So let's say who is who here. So this is log sub g. So log sub g is just the stack of g local systems on the curve. Okay, maybe I can write here. This bun sub gl, the straight bun sub gl, this is the same kind of object I defined, what, 2 weeks ago in my talk. So this is the rigidified stack of GL bundles on C. So what it really is you take the stack of all GL bundles and you kill the generic stabilizer, but you don't kill it completely, you kill the connected component of the generic stabilizer. So you kill the connected component of the center of the group, which appears in the generic stabilizer, acts on all the bundles. Okay? And this is the derived category of complexes of quasi-coherent O modules, and this is the derived category of D modules, which are quasi-coherent O modules with a connection. So there's supposed to be an equivalence like that. Yeah, what are the natural symmetries that the equivalence must identify? Well, the natural symmetries on both sides, these are labeled by pairs appointed the curve and a positive co-character of G. And so the symmetries on the left-hand side are called tensorization operators. Or the physicists call them Wilson operators. And what they are, so I'll denote them by Wx mu. So this is just some endomorphism of the derived category of quasi-coherent sheaves on the stack of local systems. And it's a stupid endomorphism. It just tensors all local systems by a given, all coherent sheaves, quasi-coherent sheaves by a given sheaf. So if you take a complex of quasi-coherent sheaves, you send it to that complex, tensored by, okay, I'm going to write it and then explain what it means, rho of mu of V sub x. So the point is that on the stack of local systems, across the curve, we have a universal local system. Which is a principal G bundle with a connection which differentiates only in the C direction. So I ignore the connection, keep the principal G bundle, and then restrict that principal G bundle on log cross the point. Once you have that, you have a principal G bundle on the stack of local systems, and you can associate with it a vector bundle by taking a representation of the structure group, and we take the representation corresponding to that co-character. So Vx is just V restricted to log cross x, and rho mu is the representation of G of highest weight mu. Okay. So this is what's happening on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side of the correspondence, the operators are the Hecke operators. They are labeled again by the same data. act on D modules now. And there, I mean, I talked about them in the special case of GON last week, 2 weeks ago. And in general, they're very similar. So their Hecke correspondence is given by this data. The choice of X and mu defines a correspondence Hecke X mu, which is a correspondence between the moduli space of bundles and itself. And so this Hecke X mu is a moduli space of rigidified again, kill the connect component of the generic stabilizer, moduli of triples V, V prime, and beta, where V and V prime are principal G bundles, GL bundles. Beta is an isomorphism on the complement of the point between V and V prime. And what's happening? Yeah, so there is a condition. I mean, if you just do this, you'll get something very big. You'll get some int scheme, which is nice, formally smooth, but it's humongous. And you want to cut it down to something quasi-compact. So you use mu to cut it down. So the condition is that for any representation rho of GL, we can look at the induced map of vector bundles. So this is a birational map of vector bundles. So rho of beta goes from rho of V to rho of V prime. It actually gives an inclusion. Well, any birational map of vector bundles. This map is actually an isomorphism outside of the point. So any such map will give you an inclusion of this locally free sheaf into this locally free sheaf times some multiple of the point. You want to bound the order of that pole. So it gives you an inclusion from rho of V to rho of V prime with a pole at X of order at most the pairing between mu and the highest weight of rho. Mu is a character of G, the highest weight of rho is a character of GL, and you compare them. So, so this is the Hecke correspondence, and then the operator Hx mu is just an integral transform on D modules given by this correspondence. So it's Qx mu push forward with compact supports, and then Px mu upper star, and well, we need to tensor by something to make it actually well defined and compatible with the ring structure on the representation ring of G. So what you need to put here is the intersection cohomology sheaf on the Hecke stuff. So when we're doing GON and the fundamental weights, this is just a trivial local system, but in general, these stacks are singular, so you need to put this guy. Okay, so this is the naive version of the conjecture. It has already a lot of structure, right? So we have to have this equivalence of categories that yeah. So I didn't say what intertwines means. Intertwine means the obvious thing. we want CG composed with a Wilson operator to be the same as the corresponding Hecke operator composed with CG. And so this gives you as a consequence this statement that I had 2 weeks ago about structure shifts of points on the stack of local systems going to Hecke eigenshifts, just because the tesorization operators have a lot of eigenshifts, for example, the structure shifts of points. So because of this compatibility, they have to go there, and it's essentially equivalent, actually, because the structure shifts of points are orthogonal spanning class of the category. So this is the naive formulation of the conjecture. So now let me tell you what's wrong with it. Okay, so this is too naive. Well, on the nose you can't really see what's wrong with it, but the problem is that this CG is supposed to be natural. In particular, natural in changes of G. So what does this mean? So there is a very precise sense in which it has to respect changes in G. If we fix a parabolic P of G, and M is the Levy quotient, then we get a way to compare local systems with structure group M and local systems with structure group G. So we get a map from from P into G and a map onto M, and this induces maps on spaces of local systems. So local systems for P, by change of structure group, give us local systems for G, and local systems for M as well. And so let me call this phi sub P and this gamma sub P. So we get a functor, I'm going to call it capital phi sub P, that goes from the derived category of quasi-coherent shifts on log for M to the derived category of quasi-coherent shifts of log for G. And then you can look at the Langlands dual parabolic, and you have a similar functor for D modules. So I want to keep, this guy. Oh yeah, this is just pull back, push forward. Yeah, so this is again, you have to do compactly supported push forward. I mean, there are 2 options of defining this functor actually. Now the maps are not proper, so compactly supported really is an important thing. So you can either compactify the fibers here, or work with compactly supported. They both give you actually interesting functors and interesting subcategories in here, but I want the compactly supported one. And yeah, so similarly, if I have the Langlands parabolic in GL corresponding to P, then we get again this Langlands parabolic embeds here, maps into its maximal reductive quotient, and we get the corresponding map on the stacks, on the rigidified stacks of bundles. So let's call this FPL and GPL. And again, we get a functor from the derived category of D modules for M to the derived category of D modules for G. This functor actually has a name. It's called the Eisenstein series functor. So again, it's the same exact thing. It's the composition of compactly supported push forward with pull back. So the images of this functor are the geometric or geometric incarnation of the categorification of the Eisenstein series. I mean, when you range over all possible parabolics. Okay, now, yeah, so when I said that the Langlands correspondence is supposed to be natural in change of group, it's supposed to be natural in the sense that it commutes with these functors. So we not only want the Langlands correspondence to intertwine the Wilson, the tensorization and the Hecke symmetries, but we also want, or need, whatever, this CG to fit in a commutative diagram of categories and functions. So you want log G or log M, or we have this functor phi t, and then burn ML and burn GL, and we have the Eisenstein series functor. And we're supposed to have Langlands correspondences, one for M and one for G, which are supposed to be an equivalence. And this should commute. And this is the problem. This actually cannot be true. This cannot be true. The reason it cannot be true is because these categories, they don't come by themselves. They come with some intrinsically defined, very natural systems of generators, namely the compact objects. And the left-hand side functor does not preserve compact objects, whereas the right-hand side functor does. And since the compact objects are completely intrinsically defined, any equivalence preserves the compact objects. So these two guys preserve compact objects. This guy preserves compact objects, but this one does not. So we are out of luck. So this cannot be true because so CG, CM, and the Eisenstein series functor preserve compact objects, but the functor phi p does not. Yeah, so the compact objects, they are intrinsically defined. So let me just recall this if you haven't seen it. So if we have, let's say, C, complete and co-complete differential graded category over the complex numbers, then an object A of C is compact if the functor of home from A to anything, and this goes from the category C to the category, digit category of complexes of vector spaces. This functor commutes with arbitrary direct sums. So this is, you know, some natural condition that you can put on objects in a category, and it's actually an important condition because the compact objects very often generate everything, and they behave, you know, it's easy to do computations with them. So there are all sorts of deep theorems concerning compact objects and generation. Going back to starting with Thomason and many follow-up results. So let me just, I mean, since it's important, let me give you an example. If, say, X is a scheme or stack which is quasi-compact and quasi-separated. Well, actually, I don't need quasi-separated. Say quasi-compact. Then if I take the derived category of quasi-coherent sheets of all modules, then the compact objects are the perfect complexes in X. So these are complexes locally quasi-isomorphic to finite complexes of vector bundles, finite rank vector bundles. And if your scheme or stack has enough locally frees, you can actually say that they're globally quasi-isomorphic, but that's not that important right now. And so you actually have, so the compact objects are something which is completely intrinsically defined, and these are really manageable complexes, right? Complexes of vector bundles we know how to work with. Maybe an important and illuminating remark is that X is smooth. Well, regular. I'm over C. X is smooth if and only if the compact objects, which are the perfect complexes, is actually the bounded derived category of coherent sheets. So the compact, the perfect complexes are of course finite complexes of vector bundles. So we always have an inclusion in the bounded derived category of coherent sheets. But this inclusion actually gives you everything if and only if our space or stack is smooth. And it's essentially the syzygy theorem. by the way, so I didn't say this, but I said the equivalence is always preserve compact objects just from the definition. The fact that this preserves compact objects is actually a theorem and not an easy theorem. So it's a theorem of Braverman and Guys-Gorey. In fact, it's based on another theorem of Guys-Gorey. Yeah, so maybe another remark is that the compact objects generate the derived category of quasi-coherencies. And maybe it's also useful to say this, that so for such X, we really have 4 categories. So we have the compact objects, which are the perfect complexes. They sit in the bounded derived category of coherent sheaves. Those sit in the unbounded derived category of quasi-coherent sheaves. And actually, there is a slightly bigger category, which is an envelope of this one, and it is the universal category, the universal completion of the derived category of coherent sheaves, in which all objects of the derived category of coherent sheaves become compact. So there is a completion process that takes any category and adds stuff to it to make all the objects in the category compact in the bigger category. And this is actually not a mysterious thing. It's really all the modules over the category of coherent sheaves. So it's functors, digifunctors from the derived category of coherent sheaves, or the opposite one, to the complexes of vector spaces. So the perfect complexes, if you complete them, you just get the quasi-coherent sheaves. So for any conceptual consideration that you can have, the perfect complexes of the derived category of quasi-coherent sheaves are the same thing. But the derived category of coherent sheaves is something strange. It sits in between, and intrinsically there is no way to reconstruct it from here, right? It comes from the geometry really, it's in between, and then you can generate something from it, which is this bigger guy. And
excuse me.
yes.
Is the Hochschild cohomologies all the same for these categories?
Is the Hochschild cohomology of the categories all the same? No. Yeah. So the perfect and the quasi-coherent, I mean the pairs have the same Hochschild cohomology, but the in between the guy does not.
And the quotients are your Landau-Ginzburg models.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so there is some invariant of the. Let me just say what Jan just said. So if x is not, so for any x, we get a measure of how bad the singularities of x are in terms of the shift field. So you can take the derived category of coherent sheaves and quotient it by the perfect complexes. So if we were smooth, this will be just a zero category, but if we are not smooth, it's some non-trivial category, which captures a lot of the complexity of the singularity, and it's the same as taking the completions in quotient. Okay, so this is the derived category of singularities that Orlov introduced and studied in great detail with many properties of this category. And yeah, so what our, I mean, if we want to get the correct conjecture, we have this issue that compact objects don't go to compact objects once we start worrying about change of groups. And so the idea is that we have to change one of the categories. We either have to change the category of D modules or we have to change the category of quasi-coherent sheaves. And in such a way that compactness is preserved by the functor phi p or is destroyed on the other side somehow, you know, for the Eisenstein series functor. So the idea is change one side of the conjecture to repair this compactness issue. And I mean, you can do either side actually, but I'm going to do the one on the quasi-coherent sheaves. So we'll correct this category. So in order to do that, we need some new understanding of what's going on. So we need to basically, the idea is to basically get some category which is bigger than the perfect complexes, but smaller than the coherent sheaves, which will behave like the compact D modules on the other side. So what we really want to study, we want to study natural subcategories in this category of singularities. So we want to have sheaves that are allowed to be, you know, supported at the singularities and not locally free, but in a controlled way. So where is this coming from? So for this, we need to describe all natural subcategories. In the derived category of singularities of the stack of local systems. And this is actually a general problem. It's not specific to the stack of local systems. It's specific to anything singular. So we need a little bit of technology. So if X is a singular, well, not singular, but say a scheme or a stack. In fact, it could be a derived scheme or a stack. In fact, yeah, so one thing I swept under the carpet is when I formulated the conjecture, I actually rigidified the stack of vector bundles. So that's actually hiding some derived structures. You can work with the non-rigidified stack of principal bundles for reductive groups when you have a continuous component of the center, but then on the local system side, a derived structure appears. So, I mean, it is useful to actually say everything in full generality, but I'm not gonna. So if you have a scheme or a stack, or even derived, Then if you look at the tangent complex of this scheme, so this is some complex of quasi-coherent sheaves. And if you shift that complex by -1, it is actually a Lie algebra object in the category of quasi-coherent sheaves. The Lie algebra structure is, what is it? It's some pairing so it's some pairing, skew-symmetric pairing from the second tensor power to this tangent complex. So it's the same thing as a map from Tx to the right endomorphisms of Tx shifted by 1. And there is an intrinsic such map, which is the Thiel class of X. So this actually gives a Lie algebra structure on this object. And if you have any complex of quasi-coherent sheaves, on X, then the Thiel class of that complex, it's again a map, the Thiel class or the Kodaira-Spencer map, whatever you want to call it. It's again a map from Tx to the endomorphisms of F shifted by 1. So you can think about it as an action of Tx to on F. So realizes F as a module over Tx. In particular, you know, if we could do that in DG categories, we can view this as a module over the universal enveloping algebra. So morally, F then is a module over the universal enveloping algebra of this Lie algebra guy, whatever that means. And on the universal enveloping algebra, you always have natural filtration. So if you can find a good filtration on the module, then you can pass to the associated gradient and get a singular support. So if we can define a good filtration, I mean, this I put it in quotes not because it doesn't exist, because I don't want to describe it. It's actually something that you can make rigorous sense of. But then you can define a good filtration. So this is a big if on F. Then we'll get the associated gradient of F will be a coherent sheaf on the spectrum of the symmetric algebra of this complex. And so the support of this will be some closed subscheme in this spectrum. So this is some derived scheme. So it's you know some closed subscheme in this derived scheme, and And the key remark, so the key fact is that F is perfect or compact if and only if this support, so we haven't defined the support yet, but you can define it for perfect complexes. You can define it for things that are gotten from perfect complexes by, say, finitely many cones. This support, so this singular support, so let me call this the singular support of F. It's actually 0, is the 0 section. So this is always some, so in fact projected to the total space of the first cohomology shift of the tangent complex. So you can get some measure of the complexity of a complex by actually looking at these supports, if you can define them. Okay. So now, actually, the theorem of Rinkin is that if X is a local complete intersection, then we can define the singular support for any F. And it has all the nice properties that you can imagine it has. And it, for example, commutes, it's functorial in maps. And commutes with Serre duality. Okay, so let me just say a few words of how one defines that. So I'm gonna, yeah. So let me just give you the idea. It comes from, I mean, there are various ways to do it. So there is a theorem, there is a projective bundle theorem for derived categories of singularities that Orlov proves. You can actually define the singular support by using that projective bundle theorem. The problem is that that definition is not, it's completely clear there that it commutes with Serre duality, but it's not clear that it's actually intrinsically defined. It's not clear that the projection here does not depend on anything. So you need I mean, because in the projective bundle theorem you have to make some choices, and so you have to check something. In fact, in all definitions, you have to make some choices and then check something. The setup, which is actually the best, that gives you almost immediately everything you want, it comes from interpretation of derived categories of singularities as matrix factorizations. And for that, actually, you need a little theorem that one of my students proved. So the idea is, suppose that X is embedded in some S which is smooth, and we have some vector bundle E on S, and we have a section in the vector bundle, so that X is the zero scale. Of course, locally we can always do that, but very often we can do it also globally. In fact, for the stack of local systems, this is true. So this actually covers exactly the case we're interested in. Maybe just make this remark. There is a stack, let's say log G. So there is a stack M, G, in which log G sits, and this is the stack of local systems with tame first order pole at a given point. Some fixed point, say little c in C. And log G is given by the equation that these are all local systems E nabla, where nabla has a pole, with the condition that the residue of nabla at the point C is actually 0. So we have a vector bundle of residues, and we have a section which is the residue map, and this cuts it out. And it's very easy to see that this is smooth. So this guy is a local complete intersection, but this guy is smooth. So it's really this setup. So if you have this setup, then you can define singular support of any sheaf, which sits inside, well, it's not going to sit inside where I want it to sit, namely here. It's going to sit inside the total space of the dual vector bundle, but it will project there, and the projection will be an isomorphism. To what did we have? Total space of the first cohomology of the tangent complex. Okay, so the way you define it is by noticing that so to do this, use a theorem. I mean, you can do it without this theorem, but I think this theorem actually makes, so from this theorem you immediately see that it projects isomorphically, for example. So it's a theorem of my student Umut Isik, who, by the way, was an undergraduate here, which says that the derived category, so there is a canonical equivalence between the derived category of singularities of X and derived category of a Landau-Ginzburg model on the total space of E, which is given by a potential, and the potential is just the tautological section times the pullback of S. Only you need to do this equivariantly under the scaling action along the fibers. So this is the tautological section. Right, so if you contract the pullback of the section with the tautological section, you get the function, and this gives you a Landau-Ginzburg model. And so this is the category of matrix factorizations. Graded matrix factorizations for W. So what does this mean? These guys are Z2 periodic complexes of vector bundles, or in fact of coherent sheaves in this setting. chains of, they're really two guys, one even and one odd, and they keep repeating, and their maps going both ways. And they factorize multiplication by W. And once you have converted an object in the category of singularities to a matrix factorization, it's actually easy to say what the support is. If you take this matrix factorization, then F restricted to the zero locus of W is a complex because of this condition. And the support, well, the singular support, let me name this factor. Mu for matrix. So the singular support of mu of something downstairs, it's going to be just the locus where this complex is not exact on the stocks. And so this gives you the definition. It turns out to be the correct definition. It has all the right properties, so Arin can actually check that. And it actually enters in the proof of this theorem. There is some version of graded Kouzou duality that you need in order to prove the theorem. And it also enters in the proof of Arinkin's theorem. But now, once we have that, I can tell you how to correct the conjecture to make it actually reasonable. So for log G, the first homology of the tangent complex shifted, not shifted, is really H2, say the stock of that at the local system V is H2 of ad V on the curve. And yeah, I mean, somewhere where I erased, it's the spectrum of the symmetric algebra of this guy, so we want the dual guy. So the singular support of any F is going to live on the dual guy. Which just by Poincaré duality is H0. And now we can define a subcategory in the category of local systems, in the Dirac category of local systems, which bounds the singular support. So it's going to be some conical subvariety in this guy, and you want this conical subvariety to be contained in the nilpotent cone. So the quasi-Koch of sub n of log is going to consist of all S such that the singular support of F at each point is contained in the nilpotent cone. So this is a condition only at the very singular points of the moduli space. I mean, the general point of the moduli space is just a vacuous condition. this is just perfection because the nilpotent cone is just a zero section. So these are guys that are generically perfect, but are more than perfect than or less than perfect, whatever you want to call it, less than perfect at the singular points. And yeah, and so now the corrected conjecture. Okay. The corrected conjecture. So it's easy actually to see that all the natural symmetries respect this condition. And the corrected conjecture is that we should have these guys identified with the derived category of compact objects in the D modules. And then if you want to take non-compact objects, then you'll complete this. So this will give you all the D modules. And on this side, you'll just get the completion of this, which is going to be bigger than the category of quasi-coherent sheaves. So this is the corrected formulation. Now it actually makes sense. I mean, you need to check that it makes sense. So they did a lot of work to check that it makes sense. And one more thing they did is that the old proof of Drinfeld for GL2 actually proves this. So it's the first example that we have of a categorical Langlands correspondence which is actually proven completely. Not just generically, not just for irreducible local systems, just completely. Okay.
Any question?
Sure, I'll ask one.
Okay.
Do you do you know? I mean, so if you include the filtration as part of the data, so it's something like a Hodge theoretic data. What does it go over to on the dual side, and what is the meaning?
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, it's not really filtration. So I didn't actually touch on this subject, but this singular support is actually only a closed subset. It has no scheme structure. It doesn't really come from a filtration as it should, right? It's defined by this ad hoc procedure. So, you know, if you take the singular support in the total space of E dual as a scheme, and you project it to the cohomology of the cotangent complex, it actually is not an isomorphism. You know, it's not independent as a scheme.
No, sure. I mean, but that's the true whether you have any filtered ring, it has this property. But then when you add the filtration data, that's like adding like a Hodge filtration. It's like some extra.
On the D module side, you have to, yeah, but you know, I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, the filtrations are something that you can actually trace for cuspidal guys, but not for Eisenstein series. So, I mean, for cuspidal guys, you can actually say what's happening with Hodge filtrations, but for Eisenstein series, I don't know.
Question? Not this thank Tony.